Paula Reid is traveling with the president. She joins me now from Somerset, New Jersey. So, Paula, the president admitted that it'll be a little bit tougher to pass an Obamacare repeal without McCain's vote. What's the president's next move?
It seems that he's going to try to make a deal. This morning, he tweeted at Rand Paul, suggesting that they should get together and try to work something out. But, Rena, unless he can strike a deal with Rand Paul or secure a yes vote from Senators Collins and Murkowski, it's unlikely that his plan will be successful.
You mentioned Rand Paul, Paula. Well, who are the other Republican holdouts, and what do you think it'll take for them to actually sign on?
So for Collins, I think the concerns are about Medicaid recipients and also people with pre-existing conditions. For Murkowski, of course, the state of Alaska has a lot to lose if this plan passes. But what's interesting, Rena, is that Senator McCain has said that he could support something like this plan if it goes through the proper process. He believes that is, of course, debates and hearings. So what we may be seeing in this plan is some ideological consensus, even if they can't get this specific plan passed this time around.
We're also watching the president's controversial travel ban. We know it's set to expire on Sunday. The president is apparently looking to introduce a more tailored ban. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Right now, the White House is considering additional restrictions on travel from at least a dozen countries that they believe aren't doing enough to prevent terrorists and other criminals from coming into the United States. Now, Rena, this was always the plan. Both the first and second iteration of the travel ban, they were both supposed to be temporary while the White House came up with its permanent policy. We don't know which new countries will be covered by this ban, but it could be announced and even implemented as soon as this weekend.
So do you think that this one will have the same legal challenges as the first two?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that the ACLU will see any of these restrictions and just say, okay, we're good, and let it go ahead. I think no matter which countries are covered, and especially if the majority of the countries are Muslim majority countries, the ACLU is likely going to want to challenge the president's power on this specific issue and continue to push this question of whether or not the promise of a quote-unquote Muslim ban on the campaign trail is now being delivered. So it does seem that even if they come up with these new restrictions, this is likely to still go before the Supreme Court in some form or another early next month.
And Paul, remind us again, what's going on with the legal fight of the previous ban?
That's right. So we're expected on the 10th of next month for this case to go before the Supreme Court. And there, the Supreme Court is going to look at travel ban 2.0. This is, of course, if 3.0 doesn't get announced this weekend, and just answer these questions about the extent to which the president really can restrict immigration, which a lot of the precedent says that he can. But the problem the ACLU is arguing is that this is not just the president implementing his national security powers, that this is actually religious discrimination, that this is a quote unquote Muslim ban that he promised on the campaign trail. A lot of very interesting novel issues going before the Supreme Court. But if he puts forth a new ban, it'll likely be some similar issues, but new questions, because you'll have different restrictions.
And Paul, I've got to ask you about this. The president used some pretty explicit language describing how he feels about NFL players kneeling during the anthem, and he also pulled NBA star Steph Curry's invitation to the White House. What's the precedent you think that the president is setting with these moves?
Rena, it's interesting. It's not so much a precedent as it is a continued pattern of the president sort of clumsily wading into some of these racial controversies. We saw this, of course, with Charlottesville last month. He came out and said there were good people on both sides. Well, I covered that rally, and let me tell you, that was not a rally where people were just there to express their differences on history and the role of Robert E. Lee. That was a white supremacist rally where they were gathering in front of a statue of Robert E. Lee, where previously, over several years, two sides had come together to talk about history. But that was a white supremacist rally. It appeared that the president either wasn't read in on the facts of that case or was actually coming out in support of them. It was just a very sort of clumsy move. Here we're seeing again, he's jumped into this controversy, and it's not clear if he really understood what Curry was saying and how he was going to vote with his team. But of course, Rena, we have to ask the question, is this really something that the president believes deeply, or is he perhaps trying to create a different controversy to distract from the fact that his party is possibly going to lose on one of its signature campaign promises if this health care bill does not pass?
All right, our Paula Reid. Thank you so much, Paula.